No one is safe anymore. A single strike from Ukraine has shaken Russia's power circles, and Moscow is now openly talking about nuclear retaliation. Is this the moment the world feared most? Stay with us, because what happens next could change global history forever. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's topic is one that has shocked the world and raised serious global concerns. Tensions between Russia and Ukraine have reached a new and dangerous level after a reported Ukrainian strike triggered an unprecedented warning from Moscow. Russian officials are now openly mentioning nuclear retaliation, a phrase that sends chills across international capitals. This conflict, which once seemed regional, is now threatening global stability. The idea that no one is safe is no longer just a dramatic headline, but a growing reality. From Europe to Asia, governments are watching closely, citizens are anxious, and military analysts are sounding alarms. The Ukraine war has already reshaped geopolitics, energy markets, and military alliances, but this latest development could push the world toward a historic turning point. In today's video, we will break everything down step by step, separating facts from fear, and explaining why this moment matters more than ever. What exactly happened? Why is Russia issuing nuclear warnings now? And how serious is this threat? Stay with us until the end, because understanding this situation is crucial not just for policymakers, but for ordinary people everywhere. This is not just about Ukraine or Russia anymore. This is about global security, survival, and the fragile balance of power holding the world together. The latest escalation reportedly began after Ukraine carried out a strategic strike that crossed what Russia considers a major red line. According to Russian sources, the target was highly sensitive, symbolically and militarily important. While details remain classified, the reaction from Moscow was immediate and aggressive. Russian defense officials accused Ukraine of deliberately provoking a larger confrontation, claiming the strike was backed indirectly by Western intelligence and weapon systems. This accusation is critical because it shifts the narrative from a bilateral conflict to a proxy war involving global powers. Russia argues that such actions threaten its national survival, a phrase deeply embedded in its nuclear doctrine. When a nuclear-armed state frames a situation as an existential threat, the risk level rises dramatically. Analysts note that Russia has issued warnings before, but the tone this time is far more direct. State media, senior officials, and military commentators are all repeating the same message: escalation will not be tolerated. This coordinated messaging suggests preparation, not panic. Meanwhile, Ukraine maintains that its actions are defensive and necessary to protect sovereignty. This clash of narratives fuels uncertainty and fear. When both sides believe they are acting in self-defense, compromise becomes extremely difficult, and miscalculation becomes dangerously likely. Russia's nuclear warning has triggered global alarm because nuclear threats are not made casually. Since the Cold War, nuclear deterrence has relied on restraint, ambiguity, and careful signaling. Breaking that pattern risks destabilizing decades of security architecture. Russian officials reference their right to use all available means if national security is endangered. This language closely mirrors official nuclear policy documents, making the threat more than rhetorical. Western governments responded cautiously, urging de-escalation while reinforcing NATO's defensive readiness. Markets reacted instantly, with energy prices fluctuating and defense stocks rising. This reflects investor fear that the conflict could spiral beyond control. Experts warn that even limited nuclear signaling increases the risk of accidents or misinterpretation. History shows that wars often escalate not by intention, but by misjudgment. The Cuban Missile Crisis nearly ended in catastrophe due to miscommunication. Today's environment is even more complex, involving cyber warfare, drones, and real-time propaganda. Social media accelerates panic and misinformation, making rational decision-making harder. The nuclear warning also puts pressure on global institutions like the United Nations, which appear increasingly powerless. As diplomacy struggles to keep pace with military escalation, the world faces a sobering question: are existing safeguards enough to prevent disaster? Or are we entering uncharted territory where traditional rules no longer apply? Ukraine, on the other hand, rejects Russia's narrative entirely. Ukrainian officials insist that their military actions are lawful under international law and necessary for self-defense. They argue that Russia's invasion left them no choice but to strike strategic targets to weaken aggression. From Kyiv's perspective, Russian nuclear threats are intimidation tactics designed to freeze Western support. Ukrainian leaders repeatedly stress that giving in to such pressure would set a dangerous precedent worldwide. If nuclear threats succeed once, they could become a standard tool of coercion. This argument resonates with many countries that fear similar tactics could be used against them in the future. Ukraine's allies emphasize that support will continue but also urge caution to avoid direct NATO involvement. This balancing act is extremely delicate. Too much restraint could embolden Russia, while too much force could trigger escalation. Ukrainian citizens remain resilient despite the risks, demonstrating remarkable resolve after years of war. However, the psychological toll is immense. Living under the shadow of nuclear threats changes how people view the future. Schools, hospitals, and homes become symbols of vulnerability. This human dimension often gets lost in strategic debates, but it is central to understanding why this conflict matters beyond military calculations. International reaction has been swift but cautious. The United States, European Union, China, and other major powers have all expressed concern. Washington reaffirmed its commitment to Ukraine's defense, while warning Russia against any use of nuclear weapons. European leaders called emergency meetings, highlighting fears of spillover effects across the continent. China urged restraint from all sides, emphasizing stability and dialogue, while avoiding direct criticism of Moscow. This diplomatic language reflects complex alliances and economic interests. Meanwhile, non-aligned countries are increasingly vocal, worried about food security, energy shortages, and economic disruption caused by prolonged conflict. The war has already impacted global grain supplies and fuel prices, hitting developing nations hardest. A nuclear escalation, even limited, would magnify these effects exponentially. Environmental consequences alone would be catastrophic, affecting agriculture and health far beyond the battlefield. International organizations struggle to enforce norms when major powers are involved. Sanctions, resolutions, and statements often lack enforcement mechanisms. This exposes a fundamental weakness in global governance. As fear spreads, some nations quietly prepare contingency plans, including civil defense measures. These preparations, while prudent, underscore how seriously governments are taking the threat. The sense that no one is safe is no longer abstract. It is influencing real policy decisions worldwide. Military analysts are divided on whether Russia would actually use nuclear weapons. Some argue that the threat is primarily psychological, aimed at deterring further Ukrainian strikes and Western involvement. Nuclear use would isolate Russia internationally and invite severe consequences. Others caution that underestimating the risk would be dangerous. Wars often evolve unpredictably, especially when leaders feel cornered. Tactical nuclear weapons, which are smaller than strategic warheads, lower the threshold for use because they are perceived as more usable. This perception itself is risky. Once a nuclear weapon is used, escalation control becomes nearly impossible. Retaliation, misinterpretation, or chain reactions could follow. Analysts also highlight internal pressures within Russia, including political stability and elite expectations. Strong rhetoric can lock leaders into positions that are hard to reverse without losing credibility. This dynamic increases the danger of follow-through. At the same time, military communication channels between Russia and NATO reportedly remain open, serving as critical safeguards. These back channels are designed to prevent misunderstandings during crisis. Whether they will be enough under extreme stress remains uncertain. The combination of advanced weapons, rapid information flow, and political pressure creates a volatile environment where small incidents could have massive consequences. Beyond geopolitics, the human cost of this escalation is often overlooked. Millions of Ukrainians have already been displaced, and fear of further escalation deepens trauma. Russian citizens, too, face uncertainty, economic hardship, and the anxiety of living in a nuclear-armed state at war. Families on both sides worry not only about soldiers, but about the future their children will inherit. Nuclear threats amplify fear far beyond conventional warfare. Even the discussion of nuclear weapons affects mental health, social trust, and long-term planning. Businesses delay investments, students reconsider education abroad, and families postpone life decisions. This invisible damage accumulates quietly but persistently. Media coverage, while essential, can also intensify anxiety through constant breaking news and dramatic framing. Responsible reporting becomes crucial during such moments. Understanding context, probability, and intent helps prevent panic. Yet uncertainty remains unavoidable. Ordinary people have little control over decisions made by powerful leaders, but they bear the consequences. This imbalance fuels frustration and helplessness. Recognizing the human dimension reminds us that behind every strategic calculation are real lives. The phrase, "no one is safe," reflects not only physical danger, but emotional and psychological vulnerability shared across borders. History offers sobering lessons about moments like this. During the Cold War, several near misses brought the world close to nuclear disaster. In some cases, individual judgment prevented catastrophe. These stories highlight how fragile safety mechanisms can be. Today's world is arguably more interconnected and more fragmented at the same time. Multiple conflicts, rival power centers, and emerging technologies complicate crisis management. Artificial intelligence, cyber warfare, and autonomous weapons introduce new uncertainties. A misinterpreted signal or cyber incident could escalate rapidly. Trust between major powers is lower than during many Cold War periods, reducing the effectiveness of informal understandings. Arms control agreements that once stabilized relations have eroded. This context makes current nuclear warnings especially alarming. However, history also shows that crisis can lead to renewed diplomacy. After periods of extreme tension, leaders sometimes recognize the shared interest in survival. Whether this moment will trigger restraint or further escalation is unknown. Public awareness and international pressure can influence outcomes, but their impact is limited. Understanding historical patterns helps frame expectations, but it does not guarantee safety. The present situation demands vigilance, patience, and a commitment to avoiding irreversible mistakes that future generations would inherit. So what happens next? Several scenarios are possible. Diplomatic efforts could intensify, leading to temporary de-escalation and renewed negotiations. Alternatively, continued strikes and counterstrikes could normalize escalation, making extreme threats routine. This normalization would be deeply dangerous. Another possibility is prolonged stalemate, where neither side backs down, but avoids crossing the nuclear threshold. This scenario still carries significant risk, as prolonged tension increases the chance of accidents. Western support for Ukraine will remain a key factor. Balancing deterrence and restraint will test alliances. Russia's internal dynamics, including public opinion and elite cohesion, will also influence decisions. External actors like China may play a quiet but crucial role behind the scenes. Ultimately, the situation remains fluid. Predicting exact outcomes is impossible. What is clear is that the stakes are extraordinarily high. Decisions made in the coming weeks or months could shape global security for decades. For viewers, staying informed through credible sources is essential. Avoiding panic while remaining aware is a difficult balance. Understanding complexity helps resist oversimplified narratives. This conflict is not a movie with clear heroes and villains. It is a dangerous reality with real consequences. As we reach the end of today's analysis, one message stands out clearly: this moment matters. The Ukraine strike and Russia's nuclear warning represent a critical juncture in modern history. The idea that no one is safe captures a widespread sense of vulnerability in an interconnected world. While nuclear war is not inevitable, the risks are real enough to demand attention. Complacency would be a mistake. At the same time, panic helps no one. Informed awareness, critical thinking, and support for peaceful solutions remain essential. Governments, institutions, and individuals all have roles to play. Even if those roles differ greatly in scale, history will judge how leaders respond to this challenge, but it will also remember whether societies demanded restraint and accountability. This channel exists to provide clarity during uncertain times, not fear. We will continue monitoring developments closely and updating you with balanced, factual analysis. The coming period will test global leadership and collective wisdom. Whether this crisis becomes a turning point toward greater stability or deeper chaos remains uncertain. What is certain is that the choices made now will echo far into the future, shaping the world we all share. If you found this analysis helpful, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments, and stay informed with us as this story continues to unfold.